The lecture today is about adjustment. Adjustment. What does that mean, adjustment? When you adjust to something, what does that mean? You're changing something, yeah. You're changing something. Why do we usually change? Or maybe a better question is, when do we change? When do we have to adjust?
When it's necessary.
When it's necessary, okay. Give me some specific examples from your life. When did you have to make an adjustment? When did you have to make a change of some kind because of what you did in your life? What's one big adjustment that almost everybody has to face in their life as they get older?
Marriage.
Marriage. Right? You haven't thought about that, have you? You just think about the love part. Oh, I'm in love. This is going to be wonderful. I can't wait to be married. And then you wake up the next morning and it's like, who's in my bathroom? Who moved my stuff? Right? There's a lot of adjustment that goes on each time we change our situation, okay? And no matter what kind of situation we're talking about, the process is basically the same. And sociologists and psychologists refer to it as the cycle of adjustment. Okay, the cycle of adjustment. Now, Wen was saying what is very obvious, and that is that coming to another country to study is a big change, isn't it? So, although we're talking about adjustment in general, we'll probably think about it more in our own terms, our own experience right now, which is a cultural adjustment. Why do people go on vacation? To relax. In other words, to make a change. Let's not work, let's relax. Okay? Well, we're going to go to Costa Rica, which is a beautiful country in Central America. Why are we going there?
It's different?
It's different, that's right. A lot of times we travel or we go on vacation to a place that's different than the place we're in. We purposefully force ourselves to do some kind of adjustment, right? Because what does it feel like when it's brand new? When you're in a new place? What does the first part of that experience feel like? It's exciting, isn't it? Yeah. So, we're going to use a graph here. This is you on a daily basis, okay? But when we go on vacation, our level of excitement, our level of interest goes up. That's why people travel. That's why people like to go on vacation, right? You go to a new place and you say, wow, I like the weather, or the food is nice, or even the plants. The plants, you say, look, I've never seen those flowers before. The people can be very friendly and nice, although on vacation that's usually because you pay them. But we have a certain bump of excitement, right? Let's go back to marriage. What happens right after you get married?
Honeymoon.
Honeymoon, because you usually travel too, right? And in fact, we can call this part of adjustment the honeymoon. Because everything's wonderful. Everything's great, right? Do you remember when you got here? A lot of students, when they come to Los Angeles and they're coming on the bus or the taxi back out to Riverside, and I know because students have always told me the first thing they do is they say, look at how big the roads are, right? Because maybe you've never seen a road with 5 lanes in both directions, right? Or that would be a good one, right? Maybe some people come and say, look how dirty the air is. So maybe there's also some negativity in there. But then, as we said, after the honeymoon is when the real adjustment starts, right? It's when the real adjustment starts. You've been in Riverside a while now. Your real adjustment has started, right? Are you still in a honeymoon? I see you smiling. I don't think that smile means, yes, I'm still really happy. I think that means, no. Okay? So the second part of cultural adjustment is coming back to normal and maybe going beyond that, right? Because at first, everything is interesting and new, right? You know, oh, this food is very interesting. But after you eat it for a month, it's like, I don't like this stuff. It's not like what I ate at home, right? It's not like my mother's cooking. Or even the people, right? In the beginning, everybody's very helpful. They bring you on campus. They say, okay, this building's here, this building's there. Then all of a sudden, there's nobody around, you know, and you're going, where am I? What building should I go to? And sometimes you ask people and they say, I don't know, and they walk off, right? So the second part of adjustment is often slightly negative, okay? It depends on how much adjustment you have to make, right? I don't know whether you guys met Ben last week. Raise your hand, Ben, so everybody knows who you are. Ben's from Australia. Do you think Ben has to do a lot of cultural adjustment in the United States? Maybe. Yes, he has to do some, but is it as much as it is for you? Probably not. Because Australian culture and American culture are pretty close together. He doesn't have so many shocks every day, right? But if you're from a country that's far away from the United States, has a very different basis for your culture, then you're going to see it's a bigger shock. And in fact, that's what some people call this. Instead of saying cultural adjustment, some people call it culture shock. Okay? I don't really like to use the word culture shock because it makes you think that this is going to be just horrible, shocking, right? And it isn't usually that bad, okay? But you need to know that this happens, right? This is the time where you start missing your family, you miss your friends, you miss the kind of food, you miss the kind of music, you miss the kind of festivals, the society in general, yes. So this is the time when you're very homesick. We often use the word homesick, right? Then what's going to happen? You can adjust or go home. Exactly. And I know, you know, she's giggling about it, but the truth is, every semester I've been here at RCC, one of our international students goes home because of this, because of culture shock. Because it can be really depressing. It can be really serious. And one of the reasons I'm talking to you about it today is because if you know about it, it's not so serious. Maybe you feel lousy and terrible, right? But your friend will then turn to you and say, it's just culture shock. And you go, oh, yeah, we talked about that, didn't we? If you don't have anybody to tell you you're going through adjustment, you just think, I don't like this place, I don't like these people, I want to leave here. Why did I ever come here? And if you get that feeling and there's nobody to tell you why you feel that way, you might give up and go home. And that would be sad, because most of you have worked all of your life to be here today, right? It is what you want. And you can do it. It's not a problem because, as Kimmy says, the next step is adjustment. In other words, you start getting used to stuff. Okay? So, step one was our honeymoon stage. Step two, I'm going to call it frustration. Sometimes people call it depression, but I'm just going to call it frustration. And now three, we're going to start the adjustment. Okay? in many ways, you've already adjusted, right? You know the campus. You know which building is which. You know probably where to find your teachers' offices. You've made all those adjustments. You know who to ask to help you with different things. So you've already made some adjustments. So probably life is pretty good while you're at school. But you do have to go home at night, don't you? And then maybe the adjustment is not quite as good, right? What do you think about American bathrooms? Yeah. The reason I ask her that question is because I've lived in Japan, and I know that Japan has a very strong bathing culture. Taking a bath, getting in the water, okay? And what's the American culture? It's the shower culture. We don't take baths, we take showers. So yeah, maybe she comes to school, she feels fine, I'm on top of it, I know what I'm doing, I can handle this. And then she goes home and thinks, oh, I wish I could take a bath, right? So what happens during the adjustment cycle is it isn't all at once. Adjustment looks more like this. It's steps. Sometimes you feel like, I'm adjusted, okay, no problem. Next time you feel like, oh, it's so tiring to live in this place. I wish I could do this, I wish I could have that, right? And then you have a good night's sleep, and the next day you wake up and say, I can do this. You're ready, right? So that kind of cultural adjustment cycle, it doesn't come back right away, but each time you gain a little bit. Each time you gain a little bit, okay? So, what have you got when you get back to your daily basis line? Do you have a new personality? Do you have a new culture? What did Gandhi say? Look at that last line again. When I lived in Japan, I worked with some students who had a Japanese father or mother, and their father or mother wasn't Japanese. They had two cultures at home, right? And it made them very nervous. Made them very nervous. That's why I was working with them, because they were very anxious about who they were, what was their identity, and all of that, right? And in fact, many people refer to them by saying they are half, right? Half Japanese, half American, or half Japanese, half Australian, or half Japanese, half Thai, right? And I said, well, that's what the problem is. Don't think of yourself as half. Think of yourself as double. When you get to this point, you're still going to be you. You're still going to have your own culture, your own language, your identity, but you're going to be double the person, because you're also going to understand another language and another culture and another set of values that mix and match with your own. It's quite amazing, by the way, when we talked to these young children and said, you're not half, you're double, the change in them was almost instantaneous. They went, oh, yeah, that's right. And they went from going this direction to going this direction, just with one idea. And that's why we're talking about this today. I want the ideas that we talk about today to be there for you, so when you start feeling frustrated or depressed, you can find out what to do or who to talk to, okay? For some people, culture shock or adjustment doesn't seem to be a big problem. If we look at those people, we can see certain factors that they have in common. So these are things that help you get through culture shock more easily, okay? Number one, they have a sense of humor. Interesting, huh? What does that mean? What is sense of humor? What's humor?
Make jokes, laugh at stuff.
Make jokes and laugh. What are you going to laugh at? To make your culture shock better, what are you going to laugh at?
Yourself.
You are going to laugh at yourself. When you make a mistake, don't think, oh my God, I made a mistake. Look at it and think, boy, that's funny, you know. I really did things backwards, didn't I? You know, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. That will help you with adjustment, okay? Don't have too many preconceived ideas or too many stereotypes, right? We've talked about that just a little. We'll talk about it more next week, the stereotypes, okay? Don't try to use old ways to do new things. So that's interesting, isn't it? That's really what we're doing in this class, right? We're talking about the new way, in other words, those study skills that you would need in an American college to get good grades. You already know how to get good grades in your own culture, and some of them are going to be the same, but some of them might be different, okay? Have realistic goals. What are goals?
Goals like objectives.
Objectives, plans. How do you know if they're realistic or not?
Know yourself, know your abilities.
That's right, to know yourself, your abilities and all of that. Yes. Well, I can help you a little bit. You're not going to like what I say, but I can help you a little bit in talking about your educational goals, okay? Here's the truth. It's going to take longer than you think, and it's going to cost more than you think. I'm sorry, but it's true. So put that in the back of your mind so you can be realistic about how to get to where you want to go, okay? Don't push yourself to do too much too soon, because adjustment takes time. And if you know about culture shock before it happens, you have one step up on everyone else. So that's why we're talking about it today. And then the last thing they have here is called ambiguity. Ambiguity. You know what this part of the word means, don't you? Bi, what does bi mean? It means two things, right? Like bicycle, right? So what do you think ambiguity means in terms of culture? Ambiguity means having two ideas at the same time, right? It's very much related to what I said here about being double, right? I remember when I was living near the San Francisco area, in one of my classes there was a Chinese gentleman, and we became good friends, and he invited me to his house because he wanted me to talk to his kid, because his kid was having a terrible time in school. And so we talked about it, and we talked about it. You know why? Because at school, what did the teacher say to him every day? Please look at me when you're talking to me. And what did his Chinese father say to him every evening? Don't look at me when you're talking to me. He was confused. And all we had to do was say, both of them are okay. Just remember which one to do at which time. And you're fine, right? And that's what ambiguity is. Sometimes what you may learn or see here may be very different than what you know already. And ambiguity basically means don't judge, okay? Don't say, this one is better because I know it. But just say, this one is for this place and this one is for this place. And what do I have to do to be a success? Some things, you have to make a small change. Other things, you don't have to change. It's really your decision to decide which ones to change and which ones not to, right? Because you can apply this in general, right? This is a 2-year school. So hopefully in 2 years, you're going to go someplace else. And you're going to go through the same thing. Now, it won't be as big, maybe. But like, you know, if you move to a different part of the United States, you'd have some adjustment cycle. Even if you move to a different part of town, or like if you just stayed in Riverside but went to UC Riverside instead of RCC, there would be some differences. And you'd have to make some adjustments. So knowing that this is exactly what happens to us all the time, and we've done it very successfully in the past, you've never failed. You've always adjusted when you had to. So you can do it again. This might seem like a bigger adjustment, the culture and the language and the food and all of those things, but you can do it because you already have experience. Re-entry shock. What do you think re-entry shock is? It'll happen again. When will it happen?
When you go back to your country.
That's right. When you go back home. You think, oh great, I'm going home. And then you get there and it's the same thing. You have changed. And you look around and think, what are they doing, right? My favorite example of that is a dear friend of mine from Brazil. And he came here and he stayed for 6 years. He got his bachelor's degree and his master's degree, and he even worked here for a couple of years. And then he decided to move back home to Brazil. And about 2 weeks later, I got a long letter from him saying, you know, I was in a car accident. And he explained that, you know, he was just driving and the light turned green and he went ahead and a car came and hit him. And he said the most shocking thing was his mother was with him and his mother was yelling at him, "What is wrong with you? Don't you know how to drive?" And he looked at her and he said, "Mother, the light was green." And she said, "Well, what does that have anything to do with it?" Because he had adjusted to the driving habits in the US, where we're very serious about red means stop, green means go. And as he wrote in his letter, red is a suggestion, you might stop. Green is a suggestion, you might go if there's no other cars coming. It is not like it is here in the US. So I thought that was a wonderful example of re-entry shock, you know. I wrote him back saying, well, it's a great story, thank you for telling me. I hope you didn't hurt the car too badly. But when you go home, you'll do the same kind of thing again, but it's not as big. It's not as big because you are going back to where you were, right? But you will find you've made some changes you didn't even know you made. Some adjustments you made here that you weren't even aware of. But again, don't be afraid, you're not going to lose yourself. You're still going to be you, okay? I don't even know whether I should tell you this or not, but even your mother's cooking will not taste like you remember it when you go home, because your taste will change as you eat here. One of my favorite Chinese students went home and the first thing he said was, "Mom, everything is so salty and greasy." Because here in the US, people are very careful about salt and they're very careful about oil, right? But that was the way she had always cooked. And he was so happy to get home, and the first time he tasted it was like, what is this, you know? Even his taste for his mother's cooking had changed, so. Of course, he eats it every day now and doesn't complain. His taste changed back, so. So, okay, if you're going to do this in the next few weeks, maybe, if you're going to start getting frustrated and depressed, how can you help yourself? What can we do to make it better? Socialize, that's the number one thing. Talk to people, right? And it can be, especially the people from your home country, that helps a lot, okay? But maybe you're here and there's nobody else from your home country, then just talk to somebody, right? Talk to somebody, tell people how you feel. People will try to help you as much as they can, right? So. But it's kind of fun to get together with people from your own country, isn't it? And then you can talk to each other and say, can you believe that Americans do that? You know, right? I see you smiling because you've done it. Guess what? When I lived in Japan, same thing. All the Americans would get together and they'd say, why did the Japanese do that? Right? And that's okay. It helps release your frustration, okay? There's nothing wrong with doing that. So, socialization is really good. What else can help you? What do you do when you go home to make yourself feel better?
Go on the phone.
Exactly. You miss your family? Talk to them, okay? Actually, you guys are very lucky, right? Because we live in an age of good technology. You can use the computer to call them and it costs almost nothing, right? Do you all know about Skype? I see most people shaking your heads. A very cheap way to talk to your family. And if your computers have cameras, you can even see them, right? Even if you can't do that, we have email, which is very quick to send messages back and forth, right? Yes, communicate with family, communicate with friends, okay? But what else can you do? Because sometimes they're a half a world away, right? And you're feeling lousy and you want to call them, but then you think, oh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't call them, right? So what can you do instead of that? What do you miss from your home culture that you can recreate in this culture to make you feel better?
Food?
Food, yes. Now some of you are looking at me like, I don't know how to cook. And what else have you learned about ethnic restaurants here? If you go to a Chinese restaurant or a Japanese restaurant here, are you happy? Haru says, yes. Some people say, no. It's not like home, is it? It's changed for American taste. So yeah, if you know how to cook, that's good. But in order to cook what you want, you also have to have the right ingredients, right? Well, you're probably lucky to live here in Southern California because we do have a lot of different groups that live here, and they have their own grocery stores, but there are some things you can't get, okay? So, good luck. Try your best, right? So food is a maybe. What else is there that we can bring here? Right in your own apartment, you can go, ah. Because music. Music is extremely powerful. And to listen to music from back home is also very powerful. It can relax you. It can put you back to yourself, right? So, and if you don't have it, have them send it to you, okay? Or buy it off the internet. You know, depends on what kind of music it is, but a lot of times you can buy the music you want over the internet, okay? Music is to me one of the more important things that you can do in your own apartment when you're feeling not so good. Put on your favorite music, or put on music that makes you happy. Okay. So what goes along with music? Movies. You can watch the news programs from back home in your own language, right? There's a lot of things that make you have that connection. And that's what we're talking about. When you get to this point where you're feeling kind of down and lonely and sad, and it's like, oh, what am I going to do? It's easy now to connect because of the internet. Make that connection. Put yourself back together. Make yourself feel comfortable. So you can do it by yourself at home with the internet, or it's very good to do it with friends. Let friends get together, right? The last time I lived in Japan was 15 years ago, before we had such good technology. So I had a friend here in Riverside who videotaped my favorite TV shows every week, and once a month she sent the videotapes to me in Japan so that I could watch my favorite show just like I did back home, because it made me relax, it made me happy, right? That doesn't mean I didn't watch Japanese TV, because I did watch Japanese TV, because I learned a lot of Japanese vocabulary by watching Japanese TV, right? And it was kind of entertaining most of the time, so. And as I said before, you know, you're not going to fail. You've done this before, and you're going to do it for the rest of your life. So just say, yeah, I can do it. Okay?